Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Industry and Innovation panel of the 16th Appleton Space Conference. And I think in all the years that it's been running, we haven't done something quite like this before, but I thought it was a fantastic opportunity when we're using this virtual format to have this kind of panel discussion and really kind of celebrate almost the enormous contribution by our industrial innovators and leaders that they make to our space sector, and how the commercially driven approach that they have increases our utilization of space, the benefits we get from it, and the exploitation of the data to provide a wide range of economic benefits. So I'm Robert Elliott. I'm the head of business development for RAL Space, which is part of STFC. And I'm joined by this amazing industrial panel. We have Richard Franklin here, Managing Director of Airbus Defence and Space Limited. I'm also joined by Elodie Viau, who's Director of the Issa Telecommunications and Integrated Applications, and also head of ECSAT, based in the UK. I'm joined by Diane Gilpin, who is founder and CEO of Smart Green Shipping. And I'm also joined by Mark Boggett, CEO of Seraphim Capital. And finally, I'm also joined by Nick Shave, who's chair of the UKspace, the trade association in the UK for space. So without further ado, I thought in the first bit of this, I'll hand over to our industry panel to give us a bit more of an explanation about why they're here, and they can introduce themselves properly, and then we can go on to the next part of the discussion. So I'll hand over to Richard first. So over to you, Richard.
Excellent, thank you, Robert, and welcome everyone. Good afternoon. I know we're at the end of the day. Hope you've got some energy left. Somebody's driving my side, so we've got the first slide up. That's great. I'm the UK MD for Airbus Defence and Space. My privilege to have been doing that now for a year or so. So I'm just going to give you a quick 3-4 minutes overview of Airbus and how we really think that space is probably one of the most exciting areas in our business. In this first slide, it's really just to give you the overall of Airbus in the UK before we dive into defence. If you're not into space, as most people in this room are, we're best known for aeroplanes. And when you go on holiday or on business, most of the time you sit on an Airbus aeroplane. Helicopters we also have here in the UK in Oxford. And if you look up in the sky when you see a police helicopter, that's an Airbus helicopter. Everything we do is about innovation, complexity, and collaboration. None of our products can we do on our own. They are highly complicated and have a huge and diverse supply chain. I think that's what, for me, makes the industry so appealing. It is how you pull all those different aspects together to actually make products for the future. And as we just dig down a little into space, I'll bring out a few examples of that. So if we just go to the next slide. Within the space part of our business, we are largely in Stevenage and Portsmouth. We have SSTL in Guildford, so we are distributed around the country. We work hugely with the universities because we see these as really helping our future innovation. We spend an awful lot on R&D. And again, that is through supply chain, but also ourselves. And it's really to the message that this is a long-term game. Nothing happens fast in space. Yes, we are getting faster. LEO constellations are making that quicker and quicker. And we're bringing some of that sort of industry 4.0 types of technologies. But this is a long-term game. I think, again, that's why it makes it such an interesting business, sort of area to have a career in, because you can start in one area and navigate yourself across a wealth of different areas. Just to give you a flavour, though, Airbus in the UK makes 25% of the world's telecom satellites. So a hugely impressive position for UK, and really puts the importance of Airbus overall in the European group. So UK is a lead for Airbus there. Just on to the last slide, if I may. So borrowing down quickly, telecom satellites, military satellites, a real speciality here in the UK with the Skynet. But a huge amount of what we do here is driven by Issa, and Elodie will be talking next. But we really do the most inspirational of our projects with Issa, whether they be the solar orbiter, Mars rovers. We were talking earlier about Aeolus, the wind measurement satellite, just absolutely fascinating. And again, a hugely attractive for our future engineers to come and work on these most complex projects. But also, we've just press announcements today on our pseudo satellite, Zephyr, a solar powered glider. And at the heart of it, though, most of this comes down to the ground. The space is interesting, but it's what you do on the ground, turning this into services, the geointelligence rich information. We own and operate our own fleet of geoimagery satellites. We do a huge amount again with ESA, the Copernicus satellites, managing and the spin-off applications of that data is hugely interesting and brings another very diverse aspect to this space family here. So in a nutshell, that's what Airbus do. And we'll move on to Elodie next, I think.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Richard, and it's a pleasure to be with all of you today. It's Elodie Viau. I'm the European Space Agency Telecommunication and Integrated Application Director, and I'm also the head of the ECSAT site, so the European Center for Space Application and Telecommunications that is based in RAL campus in UK. And therefore, it's a very great honor to Jens on the next slide to introduce you to this site. So that's really a gateway between UK and European space actor. So you have a picture of the site just right there. And it's so it has two mandates. It's to be the telecommunication and, site, but also to promote all the commercial downstream application. So then at this site, we have also our other directorates that are present and that are there to do in partnership with the RAL campus, diverse activities such as the Issa Climate Office. So looking at work on the climate and the climate change, which is a key world challenges of today. And after, we have also the disruptive technology, like Advanced Manufacturing Lab. So that is hosted at by the RAL. So it's really, our site is really doing activities in collaboration with all the other entities of the campus. And that's what is key about us. The robotic exploration, we have new sample analog curation facilities that are also in the RAL HQ building. And finally, I mentioned also our activity about the Business Incubation Center that are really there to foster SME and startup to help them grow and do activity with them to get them onto this industry. So that is under STFC in the Atlas building as well. So if you go to the next slide, giving you a bit more view of what is those BICs. It's actually part of Issa Space Solution. So it has access to not only the RAL campus ecosystem and clusters, but it has also the reach worldwide and European-wide. And despite the Brexit, as far as I'm concerned, UK is, we are really strongly supporting them. The island is not going to move away. So we are, I'm anticipating if I get this question, that now for me, Issa and UK have a long road together, and we are going to support their national initiative and also their cooperation and international initiatives. And then the last slide, last not least, I give you a bit of a picture, visual picture of what is right now going on in our ECSAT center. We are building some 5G and 6G hub. So basically with the idea to connect and provide even to this campus to become the first campus connected with automated car and shuttles. So that's what is going on right now. We have also other, I put you a picture of the previous facilities that I mentioned that are allowing industry and students to foster their capacity for advanced manufacturing, as I say, analog curation, and also in the post-COVID phase that is going to come, I hope, very soon, we are going to have this conference center facility where we will be able to exchange ideas and grow up even more partnership. So that's about ECSAT. And I will be very pleased after this COVID phase to welcome you there. And I hand over to Diane.
Hi, thank you, Elodie. So we are Issa Business Incubation partners. So we're really excited to be at Harwell, and we're working, oddly enough, perhaps on shipping using space data. And what we're really looking at is a decarbonisation of the shipping sector. And there's a really strong narrative that shipping is believed to be hard to decarbonise, and we think that's a really outdated mindset. Our purpose is to build 100% renewable powered ships out of recyclable material. So it's 100% renewable and it's a real zero emission, and we can see that to be achievable in a very short time frame. The first step is to retrofit our wing sails onto a ship importing biomass into the UK for renewable power for DRAX. We've just completed an Innovate UK study to develop the design for 100% renewable, automated, intelligent, retractable wing sails that will enable the decarbonisation of that particular leg as the first stage in the journey to 100% renewable. The question that many people ask is, why would you choose wind? Isn't that an outdated technology? And it's not really that challenging technically to retrofit wind onto existing ships, and it's probably less challenging to build new ships which integrate wind into them. But economically, the use of wind makes huge, huge sense. The energy is free, abundant, and exclusively available to any assets that are available, that are equipped to harness it. And as we look at the volatility of commodity fuels, we can see that there's a vast amount of uncertainty around what fuels will replace fossil fuels and what cost and availability and quality those fuels will bring with them. So using a free, abundant source of power makes huge economic sense. And it's a commercial decision that mitigates commercial operators against the huge unknowns about the upcoming alternative fuels. But people will say to me, well, wind is really unpredictable, but we don't see that. You know, we use data science, and that enables us, with the work of European Space Agency, to predict wind with a much higher degree of accuracy than we think anyone can predict human behaviour around markets. So I'm just going to quickly summarise the work we've been doing, modelling wind performance on that ship that we saw in the first slide by using historical data sets which statistically point to how much wind is available at what direction. We measured 16 different journeys at 6-hour points across the route, and we've modelled it both with and without fast rigs, so we could see what the performance of fuel and greenhouse gas emission savings were. All of that data that we aggregated came to at least a 20% annual fuel and emission saving over the year. And that is just the first step in the journey. What we're looking at is using that first stage to map the way that we can take the data and learning from the retrofit, build it into new technologies for the next stage of the journey that will take us to the delivery of the real zero emission ship by 2030. So thank you. I hope that's a short introduction. I'm going to hand over now to Mark.
Hey there, good afternoon everybody. I'm delighted to be here today. So I'm a venture capitalist focused exclusively on the space market. If you move to the next slide. So my firm, Seraphim Capital, is across 3 different elements. We have Seraphim Space Fund that is backed by some large corporates, including Airbus and SES and Surrey Satellites, Telespazio. And we invest into early stage businesses, typically in the A series, and have built up a portfolio of some of the emerging leaders around the world. We also have an accelerator program that runs 2 cohorts per year, specifically of space companies from around the world, hosted in the UK, typically around 20 companies a year going through that 3-month program. Then we have our own space-focused angel group. So the graphic on the right-hand side shows what we're interested in, which is space looking down at Earth. So we're interested in the data sets and the communication that is being generated by small sats, but also high altitude platforms and drones. The end customers don't care where the data comes from as long as it's low cost, high resolution and close to real time. Next slide, please. So this is a huge portfolio that we've built over the last handful of years. So we've backed a number of the UK emerging leaders like Isotropic Systems, the flat panel antenna ground terminals business, Arcit, the quantum encryption satellite constellation. And then internationally, we've backed a whole range of companies that have gone on to take leadership roles like Spire and ICEYE, Leo Labs, D-Orbit. Next slide, please. One of the things that people often don't realize that I wanted to just quickly draw to everyone's attention is just how well the UK does already in the new space market. The UK's got a leadership position across many elements of the domain. The graph on the right-hand side there shows how the UK is third only to the US and China in terms of the number of small sat constellations that it has in development. We're also ranked second only behind the US in terms of the number of small sats that are produced. We're ranked second behind the US in terms of our AI capability. We are Harwell and the Satellite Applications Catapult are the envy of Europe. And the UK is investing in terms of the number of deals, about 40% of all of the deals in space in Europe. So the UK already punches well above its weight internationally. And I'm going to hand over to Nick now.
Thank you, Mark. So I'm very pleased to be here today, and congratulations to RAL again for an excellent conference today. So my name is Nick Shave. I'm chair of UKspace. This is an elected position. I've been coming up to 5 months in the role now. I actually work for Inmarsat, the satellite operator based in London. Next slide, please. What is UKspace? Well, UKspace is the leading British trade association for the space sector. We engage with government, with international partners such as Issa and others, and many other organisations like the Satellite Applications Catapult, Satellite Finance Network and others to promote the space sector in the UK. You can see some of our company members there I've put on the screen, and in total we have 130 members. The UK space sector is around about 15 billion sector at the moment, and given the space sector is growing fast, there's many predictions out there that is talking about a potentially 400 billion market globally by 2030. We are working hard to create the environment, working closely with government to make sure that the UK wins a significant amount. We're aiming for a 30 billion economy by 2030. Next slide, please. If I could capture the elevator pitch for the space sector, I'd put it into 3 different areas. I think very relevant to today, as many science aspects today at the conference. UK is quite a leader in space science, and the inspirational nature of space is absolutely key. The public awareness, the benefits to STEM and education, the move now, as we're hearing from the current government, to move to a science superpower. Space can really underpin that, as well as climate action. 35 of the 45 climate variables are monitored from space. The other thing that's happening, I think, a lot in the UK at the moment is the strategic nature of space is becoming recognised. We've seen just recently the announcement of the new UK Space Command, and that is setting the scene with MOD and more investment coming through to create more sovereign infrastructure in the UK. And I think that's an important aspect, the balance between international partnerships and more sovereign investment. And that sovereign investment is needed also to strengthen our international partnerships worldwide. And the final one there, I've mentioned a little bit at the start, is space as a growth engine. It really can help the UK economy to recover. One of the sectors to help us grow back better after the difficult year we've had through the COVID aspects. And some of the pictures there you can see where UK infrastructure, UK services and technology is being built here in the UK to take things forward. So that growth engine part is really going to be, as mentioned already, the service aspect, some of the telecoms or PNT or Earth observation aspects going forward. So space can really help us build back better. I'm just going to hand back to Robert now.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I mean, that was absolutely fantastic, and what a great sort of introduction to how absolutely amazing the UK space sector is. So thank you for that. And it draws me to a thought and a question that we could discuss is, you know, and perhaps I can ask Richard this first, and maybe Nick could answer afterwards. But you know, how do you see, you know, from where we are now? And we're clearly punching, you know, above our weight in certain areas, but, you know, how do we evolve? How do we move forward in the next sort of 3 to 5 years? You know, where do we need to get to? You know, ask Richard first, you know, what's your thoughts on that?
I could talk all day on that one, Robert. So I'll try and keep it reasonably short. But I mean, just building on a couple of points from the panel. I mean, we have a lot of the foundations here in the UK. We have a fairly vibrant economy in terms of the space market already, from services through to the relationship with Issa, the programs, the manufacturers, right the way from the smallest to ourselves. So there's a good base. It's about that long-term vision and future. As I said, you know, space is getting faster, but it is still a relatively long-term game. And so some great news recently, the commitments and the defence spending review. The commitment around R&D in that defence spending review, $1.5 billion over 4 years, quite a step change. We do a lot of innovation and demonstration projects, but we still don't have enough follow-on programs. So I think for myself, it's really a longer term vision. You know, the government, a great sign of intent this year around OneWeb, but now let's look at what's the program to exploit a OneWeb? Where is that PNT? Should we do an Earth observation constellation? We aren't big in Earth observation. Some of our European allies are. Should we step up and create that as something that can drive, and then all of that rich spin-off? Yeah, PNT is talked about. Let's get 1 or 2 of these programs to the table so that we as an industry can really focus where we can work together over the next 3-5 years to help government bring that to fruition, whether that be in funding, through partnership. And I think for me, one of the really interesting bits about space is space technically is challenging, but actually commercially it might be even more challenging. And it's how do we create that community that can tackle some of these largest projects together in a commercial way, innovative funding, you know, Mark, Seraphim, how do you bring the smallest and the largest together in a way that we can see a return that makes it worth taking these risks together?
Okay, brilliant. And Nick, I mean, what about yourself? I mean, where do you see you know us going? You know, what do UKspace see the space sector moving forward?
Yeah, thinking about this question, Robert. I mean, if I was back here at the 21st RAL conference in 5 years' time, I'd agree with many of the things that Richard said there. Investment in certain aspects of the space sector is necessary. I think, you know, if we were to say what does good look like in 2025, I think UK firmly established as a modern space power. Now that has various meanings, and people can interpret it in different ways. But I think what I like to think that means is we do have some more credible national capabilities in development, still working strongly into ESA and perhaps some other international partnerships. We're looking at, you know, is there partnerships with Japan and Australia? We have a space bridge with Australia that's a great new development, and new partners out there on the world stage that we should be working with for science as well as for economic and also strategic benefits. So I think creating that right balance between national, international, and commercially led developments is really going to be what wins out in 5 years' time. I'd like to see enhanced collaboration and coordination through the space value chain with academia, government as well, obviously, and into industry to really drive that benefit through. Finally, I think we've heard a lot from Mark and some excellent things in the investment aspects of space, and I think we need to see more of that. And how can we capitalize more on the city to really get that investment funds moving going forward?
Okay, brilliant. I mean, has anybody else got a quick sort of 5-word answer that they want to pitch in there before I move on to the next question?
Yeah, I do. I think the government move investing $500 million into OneWeb is absolutely huge for the UK. I really hope that's going to lead to all the good things that it could in relation to OneWeb itself and launch and manufacturing and being at the forefront of regulation. Yeah. But I also think it's important to sort of set out our mindset for the UK. We need 4 or 5 or 10 OneWeb-like companies to be challengers, leaders over the next 5 years. And all of the groundwork's already in place. The infrastructure's there, the companies are there. And I do believe that we will be able to get there. It's about the capital, and I think Nick's absolutely right. We need to find a way to leverage the city investors in order to into this market to really bring that vision to a reality.
That's really, really, really strong point. Yeah, thank you, Mark. Okay, I think it kind of makes me think, we should move on to maybe another point, and totally related to it, and perhaps it's more thinking more globally about the space sector as well. But it's about what where should the focus be technologically? How are we best with the resources and the skills, the capabilities that we have in the UK? Where are we best to put our our money and our effort? In terms of technology or even markets. I'd be really interested, especially from Elodie, for instance. You see these, you're running enormous programs across telecommunications and integrated applications, for instance. Where do you see the main sort of technological and market trends over the next 5 years?
Yes, so for me, more diversity of the end user customer. So as the satellite number of customer and services continue to grow, and beyond the TV and the bandwidth market, it's really connectivity and data driven that looking forward, and that will driving smart systems, smart environment, enabling new application and new company to really start like we heard about the climate change, for example. So that's really led us towards a lot of flexibility and application. So the technologies that are driven and that we need to pursue are really looking forward to this data economy ecosystem, and basically so that there is a lot of flexibility, multiple use of satellite capability. So also the 5G and 6G will provide us a framework to serve that market. So the space become used for everything today. Everything is connected. It's become an invisible technology. So like we heard before, the end user don't care if it's going through space or not, because for him it's a digital end-to-end ecosystem, right? And so we get closer to non-space, and especially on connectivity systems. So that's a bit the technologies that are maturing. We heard about quantum technology as well, quantum computing, a new cluster, because this RAL campus is going to have new cluster coming up, right? And also partnering with other place in UK, where we are pleased to see that there is also clustering activities that are it's becoming a global UK approach to do those campus with clusters. And I think that's helping people to get connected across from space to non-space sector. So that's a very exciting time, and we have the exciting time off planet, we talk about constellation, mega constellation coming up, but also space is, we are going to have an initiative to go again towards the moon. So for lunar exploration. And therefore, those activities are going to pop up and bringing other new technology into play. So that's my 2 minutes. But all the technologies that are coming up is difficult to summarize.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, but that's really interesting, though. You know, we could, as you say, you know, we could talk for hours on this sort of subject. I mean, Mark, you know, you see a this huge sort of pipeline of flow of companies with the most amazing ideas that, you know, can, you know, with absolutely amazing commercial potential. You know, what's your, you know, if you were, you know, if you had to put your money on something, you know, where should companies be, you know, where should they be pitching their ideas? You know, what should they be looking at over the next few years?
Yeah, so I mean, this is exactly what I do, put my money where I think the market's going to move for the next few years. So one thing that we're interested in at the moment is contrarian investing. So where is everyone not putting their money? That's where I want to put mine. So we're really focused on what we call downlink, which is about getting the data back down from space, back down to the ground in a cyber secure manner. Now, this is an area that, believe it or not, has received the least amount of venture funding than any of the other sectors. It's only runs about 2% per year. So we think that is really the bottleneck for the future. There's 180 venture-backed constellations around the world. They're going to be putting up thousands of satellites. Every single one of those satellites needs to get the data back down to ground. There's just not been enough innovation and investment in that area. So that's where we're focused. I was also going to talk about trends, which I think are important, because, you know, we've already talked about how money is really required here to deliver against many of the things. And in order to bring more money into the sector, what we need to see are more exits. Investors like myself will only invest into companies if we believe that we can ultimately sell them further down the line for more money than we invested. So what's happening with exits is really important. And there's a really good trend that's underway at the moment that I just wanted to lay out there. And I believe that this trend's set to continue. So by number of deals in 2016, 6 space-related companies were sold and exited. In 17, that moved to 11. In 18 to 13. In 19, up to 17. So halfway through the year in 2020, we're already on 11. This year is going to be a record year, and I think that really sets the trend across the next 5 years. And what that's leading to already is investors really taking a huge interest in the sector. So regardless of the downturn through COVID, we've seen investors increasing their investment into the space tech market. And one really important part of that has been the growth investors that are investing larger sums of money into the maturing part of the ecosystem. We've seen significant increases in B series investment, C series investment, D series investment, and beyond during 2020. So I believe that that's a really exciting trend that we will see set to continue.
Wow. So yeah, so a lot of optimism and confidence there for this you know, commercial space sector, and that, you know, it's really, you know, fantastic to sort of hear you talk like that. I mean, open it up to the rest of the panel. You know what any technologies or market trends they'd like to see people be working on.
I mean, if I could jump in, Rob, I mean,
yeah,
I agree with Mark on the downlink, and I mean, Elodie, we've invested in the 2 satellites together for EDRS, so the laser downlink market. I totally agree that there is a challenge there in the future when we look at the size of data to be moved around. So definitely, you know, a key focus area for us. If I was to look more generally, though, really would say, you know, there's the protection of assets in the sky. So how do you make them less vulnerable, whether that be anti-jamming, more secure, cyber protected? You know, there are increasing threats, the space situational awareness, collision, removal of debris. So sort of a cluster of focus there. The mesh connectivity is clearly the one. People don't want to be connected to one asset. They need to be connected regardless of what happens. So how you engineer and orchestrate that in the ground segment is a key feature for the future. And I think lastly, flexibility. We were talking with Diane early. The these are large asset investments that are up for a long time. From the point you create your business plan, it changes. Once it's up in the space, it changes again. So flexibility in payload to allow you to adapt to your market is key for the future. The better you can achieve that, the better the returns that you can make. So those are the sort of 3 blocks and clusters that I like to look at it.
I could add something there, Robert, as well.
Sure.
Leading on from that, one area that we've looked at across UKspace, many companies in the value chain, is the fact that space, and it's been said a little bit already around 5G, but space really enables many ecosystems, and that's continuing. That's the connectivity piece that's been mentioned as well. And the UK needs to think through how we make sure we continue to do that more and better. We're going to see more with automation, with intelligent transport systems, with AI, and with the Internet of Things. And we already play a good role globally from the UK, backed with Issa investment on many of our telecoms projects, for example. So we need to make sure we're assessing that and looking for the next big application that can bring in and create more companies like Inmarsat and OneWeb and others in the country, so that we can drive that export revenue.
So I'd like to make a very quick case for thinking about decarbonisation of shipping as an application for space. It's historically it's way behind the curve. There's a huge amount of opportunities to be making serious money out of the decarbonisation challenge through commercial ventures, and because it's traditionally and historically been hidden offshore, space-enabled solutions are really enabling us to think about the whole challenge very differently. So I think that sort of we've kind of funneled down into and I would advocate this, wouldn't I, because that's where I am, but it's the specific technology, specific markets, and looking at those that are behind the curve in the decarbonisation challenge, particularly ahead of COP26, which we'll be hosting this year in the UK.
Yeah, no, that's very important. Yeah, I mean that sort of, I mean, just to follow on from that, Diane, and and if we sort of carry on with this discussion, I mean, you're a founder and CEO, and you've worked in several industries, not just the space industries. You've got this fantastic career, across all sorts of areas, and I really, I'm interested to hear from you. How you use or see the importance of research and innovation in your business. How do you sort of steer yourself through everything, and get the desired business outcomes that you require? I mean, you must have some quite major innovation challenges to break through for your business. And I'm just really interested to hear a bit more about those aspects, about how you're using innovation in your business.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think innovation is it should be the heart of every business. I mean, we've seen recently that the only certainty in the world is change, and sometimes it's more rapid than we'd like. But it's really, really important that we think about, what are we doing and how are we trying to achieve it. As you know, I've had a kind of interesting career. I mean, the guiding principle has been it's all around innovation. So I started out working in the cellular industry before cell phones were invented, and people went, why would we want those? And now we can't live without them. I've worked in Formula One and I've worked in offshore yacht racing, and what was really key about that is about mindset. Every single race, you've got to improve. You've got to do better than you did in the last race, otherwise you're toast. And I think that's the mindset that I wanted to bring to shipping, because it's a big industrial polluter, and it needs to change, and that's a really big commercial opportunity. But having said that, the lack of policy drivers does make it an extremely challenging area in which to work. But that is not only about technology. We've got to think about new ways of thinking, about new ways of working together, and drawing on that experience from working in racing, and also I've spent some time working in the early stages of the renewable energy industry. All of the solutions that we need are out there. We just need to find them, and maybe we need to grow them from a seed of somewhere else. But I think So the work that we're doing with Issa at the moment is based on some work that we did at the outset of the onshore wind industry, where we needed to get some sort of certainty of data verification of the amount of energy that was produced from a wind turbine. We then went and said, right, okay, we need that for a ship that's moved, but now we're moving through time and space, so it's much more complicated. But then there's much more data and data science capability than there was when we were first building, the 45 kilowatt hour wind turbines. So I think that whole kind of way of spotting solutions is, where do we want to go? We want to be zero. The shipping industry they're hard to decarbonize. No. We want to be zero emission by 2030. How do we do that? And then we work back from there. And so we work collaboratively with people who have expertise in certain areas, which is very much the same way as you would work in a Formula One team. You'd have a carbon fiber expertise, you'd have engines, you'd have tires, you'd have management. So you kind of go, well, what is it we want to achieve? We want to achieve this. So working back from that, what's the first stage? So we looked at the cargo owners, and that's where we came across Drax. They need to decarbonise as much as we need to provide a decarbonisation solution to the market. So that starts to then evolve. Who else do we need to? And so we work using a model called the 3 Horizons, which some people might be familiar with, and that's facilitated for us by the International Futures Forum. And we bring together our aspirations to get to 2030 over 3 horizons. So the first stage is, how do we make the industry as it is more sustainable? And then using that, how do we think about what we're learning from that first stage, which is in this case retrofit? How do we learn from that and make it more disruptive? And that's where we start to think about, well, we could use space-enabled solutions to perhaps have dynamic freight rates, for example, and that could blow the industry's mind about, well, it's not about a policeman decarbonising, it's about commercial opportunity. So therefore I will start to decarbonise. And then all of that data and learning starts to bring you into the totally disruptive, transformative solution. So that's the way we work. Along the journey, everything changes all the time. So we have to be ready for that as well. But it's, ultimately, it's about setting the goal very clearly as to where you want to be, and then being open and curious about where the solutions will come from.
Mm. Oh, very interesting. No, that's fascinating. And I mean, is it Elodie? I mean, you put your hand up there. I mean,
yeah, I just want to react when listening to Diane. She said at least 5 or 6 times. It's about solution finding. Solution is the key, and that's what we try. And space is just one asset to bring a solution. So, and I think that's what we try to build with this. Because this morning in one of your sessions, we had our director for the Earth observation, Joseph, that said, okay, the industry, the UK industry has a tremendous potential and is very strong about doing things and finding solutions, and that's we are just building and developing that together. I think that's a key, and for investment is about is doing the 3 things together. People, planet, and profit. So it's all in once that we are enabling, and I think that's why it's interesting for investors to come and join us. Right?
Okay, great. No, thank you very much. Well, we're not doing too badly on time. I think we've got about 16 or 17 minutes left. I think we will definitely have. In fact, we could do some. Questions. We've had quite a few questions come in during the session. I think it would be really good if we could see if we could answer a few. Actually, back to Diane again. A colleague, Jeremy, has asked if he could see that wind power would reduce the CO2 and other pollutants. Reduce noise damage to marine animals as well. So there's that whole environmental aspect there as well, the marine environment. But he was just wondering how it compared for speed, and would the shipping community have to allow for longer periods for goods to arrive, or the opposite?
It's a really good question. We would envisage working wind with some other mechanical form of propulsion. So that would be an engine, and at the moment we're retrofitting onto vessels which have fossil fuel powered engines. But what's really interesting about the work that we've been doing with Issa is that you can start playing with speed. And we had a very interesting, we've had through the Innovate UK study we did with Drax and their ship owners. We could save more emissions if we went slower. We could save more fuel if we went slower. And so there's a bit of a opportunity for space here, because there's a sort of air traffic control system that we need to be implementing into shipping. So rather than speeding across the ocean and then going, oh, we can't get into port, let's be a bit smarter about that and moderate our speed. And then when you're thinking about a critical cargo like biomass, which keeps the lights on around the country, there are particular points where it has to get there quickly. So you can go faster and save fuel in other ways. You can go, well, it'll be windy on Wednesday and it's not windy today, but we don't need to go full bore because we don't need to get there till Thursday and it will be windy then. So we can play tunes on the way that we optimize the wind with the speed against the delivery scheduling. So I think that's a really critical point, that quite often when we see wind on ships, we think we're going back to kind of being stuck in the doldrums and small boys on bowsprits and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. But in fact, it's fully optimizing the propulsion or thrust call off, and that is ultimately where we would like to get with an AI enabled system that does that autonomously, so that the crews aren't involved. But the first stage, retrofit, do it with a routing solution that optimizes, and then ultimately it become automated.
Okay. All right.
But I think, Robert, that brings a great example of so much of our innovation has to be linked to concepts of operations. Innovation in itself is fun, but it doesn't necessarily take us, and particularly when we look at some of the new commercial applications and also defense, there's so much that we could enable, but actually getting the customers, the users, to look at how that would change their ways of operation, and then look at that end-to-end business case, because it might mean you don't need one asset, you need a different asset, you could get rid of some platforms, and actually looking at that end-to-end innovation chain is so much a key of the thinking. And this is why I really sort of call out to people in our business is this isn't all about science technology. This is about solution technology, about people that can look at business cases, can look at the actual end user adaptation and bring that together, and then work with the scientists to deliver those amazing space capabilities. But it isn't, we don't just want amazing space engineers. Yeah, it's a rich ecosystem of people to really bring this together.
Yeah, and actually there was an interesting question about, what are the major skills gaps in the UK that are needed to support the next generation of innovative space companies, and perhaps you partly answered that. I mean, have you any more thoughts on that, and also open that up to everybody as well?
I'll let Elodie talk. She put her hand up.
I'm trying to. Yeah, so definitely, I think that's key what you said, that it's a cross-field approach, right? So we need technical, commercial, we need all field together, because and also within the various field, we need various of diverse profile. I think the diversity is key. We talk often diversity about gender or age, but it's also diversity of background, profile, interest, and capability. So that's really the key there, right? So that's what we really need to have in our teams, and that's the beauty of having a campus, because then you have various clusters that ultimately attract different fields. You have energy, you have food, you have people more technical oriented, and then at first you're like, okay, and why is all of that is linked to space? And after you find out that in fact there is a link to space, because it's the services and the data. As now we are data driven, all those fields are connected, kind of. So that's. I'm sorry, I'm getting a bit enthusiastic there. Right?
No, I totally agree, Elodie.
Mark, you wanted to share a point.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It is about being able to articulate the solution to the end customer. What the UK doesn't have a shortage of is brilliant inventors with fabulous technologies. I mean, they are everywhere. What the UK does have in short supply is those same people being able to articulate what their proposition is in a business language that means solutions, that means profits, that means use cases for customers. It's a really big problem, and most technologists suffer from it. And this is the reason why the UK and Europe and the US have seen a huge amount of accelerators growing in recent years. There's a huge place for them, because what they do is they take these technologists, they put them through a program to help them be able to hone their articulation about their business, talk about the things that are important that relate to their customers and how it might work as a business model. And it doesn't take a lot of effort, but it's really important, because they can't access capital or grants or hire the people that they need until they can actually talk about it. So one of the things that's really been driving Europe in recent years, and particularly in the UK, is around the large number of accelerators that are available. There's more than 100 in the UK. And those are the things the skills that these technologists really need, so that they can then really talk to customers, they can talk to investors and drive their businesses forwards.
Okay.
Rob, if I could come in briefly on that, on the skills point, I think, through sort of UKspace, but also working closely with academic partners and the Space Growth Partnership, which includes government, across all different stakeholders. There are initiatives to look at where we need and what type of engineers and scientists we need going forward. We have earlier this year looked at how we can create a significant number of jobs in the UK through the space sector. In fact, we identified 30,000 could be created by 2030. And a lot of those would be in the sort of green and environmental and new space areas that we've been discussing today. So if I was to suggest areas to focus on, I would always think about software and software engineering, AI, that application space. That's where the real growth is going to be in the services side. But also not forgetting security and cyber. That's going to become much more important going forward.
Yeah. Okay. And then if I could ask you another question, Nick, from one of the from the audience. It's about how you think maybe all of us, can work together, ESA, UK Space Agency, UKspace, and industry, to fund new innovation and growth of existing expertise. Are the existing financial models the right ones? And how can things like regional governance, such as our local enterprise partnerships and city deals, best support the space sector in their local area? I mean, it's a big question, but it'd be interesting to hear your view on it.
Sorry, I was on mute. That is quite a big question. I think there are some national funding support arrangements. There's the capital investment side as well. But from a funding perspective, the new program that the UKSA put in place this year, the National Space Innovation Program, is helping us to grow that ambition. And there's some new projects going to be announced soon, I think, on that, both nationally and internationally. So there's a good example. I think, from the regional side and local government, we are seeing more and more, particularly around, I suggest, in the launch area. And again, by 2025, where would we be? I'd hope we've launched lots of satellites from multiple spaceports in the UK by then. That'll be incredible. So I think, space has the opportunity through initiatives like this to really regenerate some areas of the country where there is perhaps population reduction, and Northern Scotland's a good example with launch.
Yeah, okay. Does anybody else have any further thoughts about that question? Otherwise, we can move on.
I'd just add, I mean, we've done a lot of very successfully in Wales with our Newport and Broughton sites, a very good working relationship there, looking at how we can help work in the local economy and sort of, boost and bring the right technologies to the right sectors. So I think it is a good model. I think we just have to be also cognizant, though, we're competing with many other sectors, and we really need to be able to demonstrate how we will bring more value for those invested pounds in other sectors. And I do think our high-tech nature, the spin-off, the supply chain is a good advert for how it can work, but we just need to be very, it comes back to the investment question, doesn't it? We have to be good at showing those local funds, why us?
Yeah. Mark, did you have a point there? Or?
No, not particularly. Other than that, the grants and things that are available are absolutely critical to our innovation. But I do think that we're taking the approach of a sort of a mile wide and an inch deep. I think that we need more focused, bigger grants that will rapidly enable companies to scale quicker. It's a global market. These companies can't sort of get by on low-digit millions. It needs to be tens of millions, and it needs to be provided to them very quickly to compete on a global scale. So that's the thing that I would like to encourage all of the grants authorities to think about. Tens of millions of dollars and pounds of grants. I think it will have a big impact.
Okay, brilliant. No, thanks very much. So we're sort of running out of time a bit now. We're in our sort of last few minutes, and I think we need to wrap up. So I wanted to thank first of all the audience, for sending in all these fantastic questions. And I'm sorry we haven't been able to answer them all, but there have been quite a number coming in. But in the last couple of minutes, I think it'd be interesting just to take a little change of direction. I think, and we heard earlier on today in the conference about from UK Research Innovation, in fact, about the importance that we place and the emphasis that we must place going forward on things like equality, diversity, and inclusion. And how best to support those. And I just wondered, very, very, briefly in the time that we've got, if we could go around our brilliant panel and ask them, how they see, diversity in their workplace or their, in their business, how that can support and improve their, everything about their business really. And so perhaps I can ask Elodie first about Issa's perspective on equality and diversity.
Yeah, so I think I touched briefly on it, and saying that there is various forms of diversity, and again we need that to be able to generate all the new input, innovation, and vision of the future that we just touched about today. What is important also is to understand that it's getting better, but it's not there yet, and we need it at all levels, from startup to investment, from engineer to board member. So it needs to be globally, and I pretty much like what you said, because it's not just diversity but also inclusion. So being at the table is important. Being invited to talk when you are at the table, it's even more important.
Yeah. Okay.
And we just need to encourage. And Mark, you want to add something? Maybe?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think certainly from the startup perspective, we're already doing pretty good on diversity. It's very rare that we get a company that comes in and they're 3 British white engineers that are trying to pitch us for money. We've got a mix of male, female, every country in the world working together. That's very much the culture of the startup. So diversity really is a core element, certainly of the successful startups.
And maybe that's something that we could really champion across the sector as a whole as well. That is a real sort of win theme. What about you, Richard? I mean, across Airbus, I mean, it must be a major aspect.
It's a major aspect. It's a major focus, and I think we see some real areas of success, and it comes more to your startup culture. So some of the image processing type areas, so these what I'd call the more nascent technologies, attract a younger, much more diverse population. Our manufacturing is not diverse enough. Yes, we get good graduate apprentice diversity, but as a mainstay business, and it's partly complicated by defense as well, it makes it doubly hard. That is also a not diverse enough industry. So when you add the space element and that, so we're on it. It is improving, as Elodie says, but we really need to keep on it, because if we want to be successful, it's absolutely required.
And Diane, how about you?
Yeah, so I think diversity is absolutely critical to the point of view that we bring to the solutions that we're trying to develop. I mean, if you have a kind of monolithic approach, then you get a kind of dull solution. So we work across all cultures, but we also work with a lot of small nations, small island nations, who have really important challenges, and we can use those small islands to scale to create solutions and then scale up onto the larger. So yeah, we're absolutely critical to developing ecosystems.
Okay, and finally, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely critical point. I think from a UK space perspective, we've been working with the UK Space Agency recently, actually, to do a survey to look at the equality, diversity across the sector. So that'll be really interesting to see. We know that we have some issues in a few areas. I think BAME is one area that we're underrepresented at the moment, and that needs to be increased. Focusing in on where I work specifically in Inmarsat, I mean, we are a very diverse culture. As an example of a big space company in the UK, about 1,000 employees we have in London. There's about 30 different nationalities there. And I'd agree with what Mark said as well. Some of the smaller companies and more innovative companies we work with to bring through some technologies, that's where the real diversity is already there. And it's great to see that. And we're really encouraging that going forward.
Brilliant. No, thanks, Nick. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that survey. I think, I'd urge people to fill that in. It's quite widely available. Right, we are completely out of time. That was, it was absolutely fantastic. What a brilliant panel. I want to thank each and one of you for your brilliant responses, and it's been a real, we've had a really good discussion here. And yeah, I mean, basically everybody needs to be back here at 17:25 on the dot to hear from the great Professor Jim Al-Khalili, who's going to give his keynote lecture about the nature of quantum reality and why we should care. So I'm going to look forward to that, and I can't wait. And we'll also hear some closing remarks from Professor Chris Mutlow as well, who has worked incredibly hard today to make this conference a success. So thank you once again, and goodbye from all of us. Goodbye.
Yes, bye.